911 emergency, what are your openings?
A car accident, major car accident. There looks like there's about 3 cars in.
Are there any injuries?
I'm going to say yes. It looks pretty bad.
We have an amazing team within emergency services. They're compassionate, they're dedicated, they put others' needs in front of their own. We have to be prepared every day, every minute. It can be from a very mild illness or injury, or it could be a very complex illness or injury that is very life-threatening to a patient. And so at all times we have to be prepared to care for those patients. Great Falls and our region are very fortunate to have the emergency services that we have. We're only one of 4 level 2 traumas within the state of Montana, which allows us to provide fast and timely care to our trauma patients. We have our hospital-based flight program, which allows us to go get those critically ill patients, as well as have very skilled and well-trained staff to care for those patients as they arrive to our emergency department. Mercy Flight we have both a rotor wing and a fixed wing. We can fly in our fixed wing from as far as to Salt Lake. We can go Seattle. We've been to Albuquerque, to Ohio. So we serve a huge area. It allows us to bring patients into our facility as well as transfer patients out.
On September 2nd, 2014, Rachel Lukasic, along with her grandparents and a pilot, headed out on a routine flight over the Little Belt Mountains. The 4-passenger Cessna took off from Great Falls. The weather was clear with light winds. Just minutes into the flight, the pilot began having problems directing the aircraft, and the plane struck treetops and crashed to the ground near Kings Hill Recreation Area parking lot. Rachel's grandfather was able to kick out the cockpit windshield as the plane was being swept by flames. Rachel's grandmother, Sue Majerus, pushed her granddaughter out of the broken windshield to safety. Sue Majerus lost her life that day. Her final act was to help save her granddaughter.
On September 2nd, me, my grandmother, and grandfather, we were going sightseeing. So the pilot said, "I can take you sightseeing if you want." I was like, "Sure, but can you wait till I have my granddaughter?" Because she's never flown on a plane or anything. So we went September 2nd, and when we took off, it was wobbly. I didn't really like it, so I fell asleep. And then when we were crashing, I woke up to us burning, but I didn't know that at the point. My grandmother screaming and the pilot screaming. And then the pilot turned around and grabbed me and pulled me out. And when my grandpa got out, he turned around and grabbed from the waist up was already out of the plane. So he grabbed my sweatshirt and started pulling me out. And the pilot threw himself on top of me gently to put the fire out. And then we walked 3/4 of a mile out of the plane, and then the pilot and us waved the car down.
And I was at work about 45 minutes before I got off, and my stepfather called me and told me that there'd been a plane crash and that I needed to get to the hospital to meet up with my daughter. From the time that she entered the emergency room, I don't believe that we were in Great Falls for an hour before we were in flight headed to Utah, and I think the flight was probably about an hour or 45 minutes down there. It was pretty fast. Well, when we first got down there, they were worried about the swelling in her legs, that she might lose her feet, so they had to do a couple of procedures to release the swelling, and they were successful. And then the first graft, they were able to do both of her backsides of her hands and one whole leg and part of the other leg. and then they had to wait for the skin to grow back to reharvest, and they did the other one. So in the beginning they were hoping we'd get out of there by Halloween, and then we were shooting for Thanksgiving, and it was closer to Christmas when it was all said and done. But
I stayed at the birth center for 3 months and 4 days.
I slept on the couch in the room for the whole time, and then we were outpatient for probably the last 30 days, maybe.
I got new skin from my back to go to my hands and legs, and therapy helps me bending my legs and moving my fingers.
So I think probably the first responder treatment as well as their treatment is probably what made the difference.
Can't really pin down to the ground, and I don't have my grandmother with me anymore. That's about it.
On May 2nd, 2012, Mercy Flight was notified of a farm accident 7 miles northwest of Great Falls with a possible amputation of the hand. Upon arrival, the flight crew found that the injured party was fellow team member and pilot Joe Knox. After arriving back at Benefis, the trauma team examined Joe and found an extensive list of injuries, which included partial amputation of his right hand, collapsed lungs, fractured ribs, a liver laceration, and 2 crushed vertebrae. Joe was losing a tremendous amount of blood. The Benefis Emergency Department team was able to surgically stem the flow and stabilize his other injuries. Joe was then sent by Mercy Flight Fixed Wing to Harborview Medical Center in Seattle.
My accident on May 12th, my wife and I were out just mowing, killing weeds in the place. We have a place at the edge of town, and she was running the small lawnmowers, and I was running the little 8-inch tractor with a 5-foot brush hog on the back of it. And I was out getting the big stuff and the culverts and stuff. And when I turned off the road, I caught a culvert, about a 2-foot culvert, with the right rear tire, and it bounced me out of the seat. And when I came back down, it threw me up over the tractor, but I was able to hang on the steering wheel. And then when I came back down, I missed the seat, and I went down on the transmission. And for like 2 seconds, now I'm sitting on the transmission between the seat and the steering wheel. And then the back tire went over my right ankle, and that's how it broke my ankle. But when it stood on my ankle, it's just like a 2,000-pound gorilla grabbing you, and then it just peeled me off the tractor. And now the tractor's still going forward, and the tire's standing on my foot, and it peeled me down the right side between the transmission and the tire. There's about 18 inches of space there, and it pulled me down through there. I mean, there's no heroism here. I was screaming the whole time, and it's dragging me through. And then I finally got my leg out, and now I'm just hanging onto the steering wheel and being drugged through. And while I'm trying to thrash around to grab something, I grabbed the PTO shaft on the mower, and it instantly took my hand. And it's kind of sad the way your brain works, because between thinking about dying and what you're going to do and how you get out of this, my next thought that I remember was, damn, I'm not going to be able to fly anymore, because it just took my hand, because I assumed it took my whole hand, because it was instantaneous. And then my second thought was, there's no way in hell I'm going to let go of this thing, because I can't survive going through that mower. If it took my hand that quick, it's going to take the rest of me. I'll come out in little pieces. So the good thing is, when I fell through, when I grabbed the steering wheel, I pulled it into a circle, and I went around, and it came back around the driveway and went up to the main road, and there's 30 mailboxes there that my wife and I had put together just a couple of years before for all the neighbors. And I hit that, and it stalled the tractor out, and I thought, oh, thank God. So I ducked and ran and rolled out. And then about that time, the neighbor kid and his grandma were driving down the road, and they stopped, ran out, and he comes running up, Mister, are you okay? No, call Mercy Flight. I'm crushed, About the time then, Linda comes running up. I told her, sweetie, I've done it now. This one hurt. This was bad. But if they hadn't have done what they did, I wouldn't be here. I mean, that's it. They were able to save me and stop the bleeding and package me up and get me out there. If they hadn't been able to do that, I wouldn't have made it. Very appreciative to be able to come back and still do what I love to do. And it's so amazing how much the community came together. And I'll never be able to repay that. I think it's humbling to be able to be a part of this team and be able to go out, 100, 120 miles and grab somebody in their hour of need and be able to bring them back here and try to help them. A lot of small things that maybe used to bother you don't bother you anymore. It doesn't matter. You enjoy all the people a little bit more. You enjoy the flying a little bit more. There's nothing like a good near-death experience to make you appreciate things better. Isn't that sad?
We treat all patients that present to our emergency department, regardless of their ability to pay, which is why it's so important to have philanthropy for our emergency services, because it allows us to provide that level of service to all patients. Philanthropy has given us a lot of things in emergency services that we would not have been able to necessarily have.